Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Mayor and Board of Commissioners for July the 12th, 2016. Will you rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will you bow your heads with me for a brief prayer, please? Father God, I come to you tonight on behalf of the town of Rising Sun. I ask that you continue to watch over our citizens, Lord, and watch over our elected body. I pray for everyone that puts on the uniform of a police officer, God. Over the past week and a half, we've seen the tragic events that have happened in Dallas and across our nation. We pray for not only our police department, but for everyone that puts on that uniform. We also pray for our armed forces that are serving overseas and that you will be with them in conflict and in peace. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. First on the agenda, we actually don't have approval of any town minutes or executive sessions. I'm actually going to change this up. I spoke to the board. We have a couple of, from my understanding, we may have a couple of gentlemen that want to speak regarding our debt service tax. And before we do the presentation on debt service tax, we're going to go ahead and do a special citizens comment regarding that. So if you are here to discuss the debt service tax or anything with our utility billing service, if either one of you want to go, you can. Sure. If you wouldn't mind just stating your name for the record and your address, that would be great.
My name is William Cother. Address is 77 Stevens Road, Rising Sun. First of all, I'd like to thank all the elected folks for taking an interest in Rising Sun's well-being and urge you to continue your efforts on behalf of the town and its citizens. Yeah. I say this because you're responsible not only for your actions, but the actions of your predecessors, just as those who follow you into elected positions are going to be responsible for your actions or your inactions. With that said, Resolution 2016-07 has been enacted as a measure to ensure funding to allow the town of Rising Sun the ability to continue to provide services consistent with directives within the town's charter. Services that are incumbent on most municipalities that are self-governed by the populace. I'm an owner of two properties within the incorporated limits. One property is a rental unit, the other is adjacent to my home on Stevens Road. The Stevens Road property has no municipal water or sewage on site. There is no trash collection from that site. This property was annexed to Rising Sun in 1979. I purchased it in 2012 and had a small barn-type structure erected. The assessed value is $5,100. Past yearly taxes have not exceeded $70. Current tax is well over $400. And I don't expect the burden to lessen in the foreseeable future. With no services offered or asked for, what reasonable person would expect to pay this cost? I'm not the only owner of property in Rising Sun with this concern, so I have two questions. Will the town rescind this service debt fee for these affected properties? And in the resolution, there was a comment about single-family residences absorbing this tax unless otherwise exempted. I'd like to know what the otherwise exempted is and how I get on that list. Okay. The second question, if the town is not prepared to rescind the tax, is the town prepared to provide water and sewage services and trash removal for these affected properties, should their owners desire? Non-availability of water and sewage isn't an issue. It's not my problem. I had a conversation with Mr. Bonenberger this morning. Was told water and sewage is not available. Well, that's not my problem. If you're going to tax me for it, the town's responsibility is to provide hookups for the typical costs associated as per previous administration's actions. You know, it's a circle. Whatever you guys do is going to come back to haunt somebody. Previous administrations have said hookups are now $10,000 per hookup, I believe, per water and sewage. Okay, it's not my problem if you have to purchase right of way. It's not my problem if you have to declare eminent domain to cross to get to my property. There are no town roads to my property. The only access is off of Stevens Road. Okay? And there's no water or sewage. I don't have trash pickup. This is an unfair tax. You know, some final points, I'm not a resident of Rising Sun. I cannot vote in municipal elections. Again, what goes around comes around. Somebody said just because you're a property owner, you can't vote if you don't live in town. I have no representation. Me here tonight is the only representation I have. Resolution 2016-07 cost me money, even with the supposed tax deduction. Even if it is a legal deduction. I talked to Mr. Brandenberger, he's assured me town lawyers say it is. I don't know of any IRS agent who's going to say trash pickup's a legal deduction. Now, it's worded as a debt service. I know that, and you know that, but we all know what it is. Okay? I received nothing from the town. And this is a new way of collecting the same money. Your words from your website. This is not the same money. I've never been taxed in this manner before. And I really don't want to be taxed in this manner now. And finally, is this the cost of doing business in Rising Sun? You know, there are a number of people. I only have one rental unit, and I'll absorb that cost. But you have people that have 2, 3, 4, 10, maybe more than that. What are they going to do with that $384? Absorb it? They're going to pass it on to the renters? You pass it on to the renters, what are they going to do? The center of Rising Sun is deserted now. Look at the for sale signs up and down the road. You know, what bothered me most about this whole thing, I used to be quite involved with town politics. I haven't for a number of years. When I got my tax bill, I said, this isn't right. So I went to your website, and I finally found a resolution. I read the minutes of the meeting, and I watched the June 14th meeting. I saw Mr. Bonenberger present an option. The town needs money. Anybody that lives in Rising Sun or lives around here knows that we're in the toilet and we're slowly circling. Okay? You need money. There are other options. He presented you an option. You folks have been elected to represent the people. I didn't see anybody put a thinking cap on. I watched the video. I didn't see any discussion between you guys. Are there other options? You know, if the town needs money, you need to raise the taxes. I'm sorry, nobody likes that. But it's the only viable option. You shouldn't put burden on people who don't use your services. Okay? It's not a socialist agenda where everybody's the same. You guys didn't look to see what was happening. You know, I'm not the only person in this town that has property that's not using water or sewage. You're going to have more complaints. This was the wrong way to do it, in my opinion. Opinions are just like certain body parts. Everybody has one. But it's the truth. There needs to be some more thought put into the problem. Any questions? I'm done.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Jackson at 119 Cooper Avenue. I too, of course, got my tax bills, and I understand what you're doing, and I feel in basis it's a good idea. I guess I don't really have a complaint about my house, but however, there are 3 other properties I have in town that are vacant, unimproved, and you know, nobody likes taxes, but it's a necessary evil to live in this world. But if I was to tell anybody here that their property tax rate was going to double or triple or multiply by 10 times, you'd be upset. This property went up 40 times what it was. This property increased 85 times what the rate was. And this property here is 243 times what the rate was. Now this is a small parcel, 0.0013 acres, which is 56 square feet. I don't know why it's so small. It's something that Fleet Cooper did with the town back in the 60s. But now I'm the owner, and now I have a property tax bill that is more than what the property is worth. at this point, I couldn't give this property to somebody because it's not as big as this room. You know, if I didn't pay the taxes and it went to the sheriff's sale, nobody would want it. It's landlocked. You know, I ended up with it. So, and actually, these 3 properties, probably in the long run at this point, are saving the town that they're not improved because they're not a Ryan Drive nightmare or a Brian's Grace nightmare, or they're just sitting and patiently waiting maybe someday for somebody to come along and do something with them. But those 3 properties have no water or sewer. The one property does have a sewer line running through it, though. I have no trash pickup there, nor do I need any. The other thing is, I understand that you know, in the long run, everybody's going to say this is a wash because you're going to be able to take this off of your taxes, and I understood that that's what the town lawyer has also said. I did get on the IRS website, and many states and counties also impose local benefit taxes for improvements to properties such as assessments for streets, sidewalks, and sewer lines. You cannot deduct these taxes. And then it does say here also, local benefit taxes are deductible if they are for maintenance or repair or interest charges related to these benefits. That's kind of a double-edged sword. In first sentence there it says you can't, and then it says you can. So I kind of think maybe it's a gray area, open to interpretation. Very well may be that if you did get audited, I don't know how to. I'd have to talk to someone a tax lawyer who could tell me. But I managed to find that in 5 minutes of looking this evening. So I pretty much covered everything I had to say. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Calvin, do you have a debt service tax presentation that you want to make?
Yes, we can, if you'd like to do that. And as I go through, I'll answer some of the questions or the points that have been raised through the citizens' comments. The first item that I wanted to cover here, because I think it's important to bring this up, and Mr. Cather mentioned some of these items here. One of the things I would like to start with, I guess in defense of the town of Rising Sun, there has been this perception floated that because the town has debt service that somehow that's a bad thing. And I'm a little bit puzzled by that, because that would basically entail that any organization or business, let's take a mother and father family and look at them as a business, when they would come up and see a house that they want to buy, unless they have the $150,000, $200,000, $300,000 someplace, they have to take a mortgage on that. A 30-year mortgage typically is what people take. And if they want to buy a vehicle to operate their business, such as going to work, running their kids around to different events, they typically take out vehicle loan payments. And in essence, that's what the town of Rising Sun has done. It is leasing vehicles, it has taken out loans to pave streets, and it has a mortgage on the building, and it has loans related to debt service. And our loan values are very good. They're not bad. We're not filing for bankruptcy. We are a business that has to continue to manage its money wisely, just like the mother and father who run a home here. So I think I think somehow we got this reputation recently that the sky is falling down because the town is going to have payments for the next 30 or 40 years, and I'm just suggesting that there are homeowners and businesses. And then the other thing I think that's important to note is that as we've been going through the Chester Water process, one of the other things that has been enlightening to both Commissioner Lashir and I is the fact that a solvent or stable utility entity has a roughly 60% expense related to debt. And what I mean by that is, imagine we've all looked at Ryan Drive, and we've all looked at the roughly $750,000 million cost associated with just fixing Ryan Drive. We have a new issue down in Valley View that we've got to deal with that. We can't continue to have this water line breaking every 25 feet, every 9 months, and creating the controversies and the inconvenience down there. So maybe we're looking at $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, whatever, to fix that water line down there. In the absence of taking on debt or loans to do that, you would have to raise the taxes rather significantly. And we've already gone through the exercise of realizing that raising the tax in the town of Rising Sun 18% only generates $138,000 of cash flow. That's not enough to pave a road. It's not enough to fix a line. And so, as I was suggesting, any utility company, if they have $1 million repair that they have to do, they're not going to come out and raise the rates on their users that particular year and say, we've got $1 million of infrastructure increase, $10 million of infrastructure increase. Sorry, we're going to have to raise your rates through the roof. My point is, financing and debt service, when managed properly, is something that solid, good businesses need to have. You can't cash flow everything. And that is something that the town of Rising Sun did do for years. When I first came here, I heard stories of if we needed a new dump truck, we just took $766,000 of real estate tax and went and dumped $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 for a new dump truck. Never built up any reserve funds, never had any rainy day funds laid away because we just cash flowed everything on a yearly basis, and that's not good for a business to do. So I just want to start by saying that this idea that the town is any different than any other municipality, or that this town is different than any other $4 million a year business, because that's roughly what we are, that's really not, it's not an accurate and to some degree not a fair assessment of the town of Rising Sun. So, as we reported in the budget meetings that we had here, this basically here is and I'm going to go through this quickly. We went through a lot of details at the actual budget process here. These are the assessed values of properties in the town of Rising Sun going back to 2010, when, as I like to say, the town was at its apex of property values. The same roughly 901 properties had a total assessed value, and I'm just going to round the numbers up, we're down to $236 billion. That brought in real estate tax revenue of $959,000. In 2016, those same 901 properties have now dropped to $188 billion of $188 million of assessed value. I wish it was $1 billion there, for a real estate tax revenue of $766,000. When you add on inflation over the last 6 years, that's basically a difference of $211,000 of real estate tax that the town has been trying to manage the services that it provides. That is equal to roughly a 27% loss in revenue. And we've talked about this at the last meeting, how critically important that 22% is to every property owner in this community. We've talked many times about when people make an investment in their home, that is their leverage in life to be able to do certain things. Home equity loans, refinancing, pay for weddings, pay for college education, pay for whatever. And so when the town sees a 22% loss in roughly assessed value, that means houses that are worth $100,000 could have been worth $122,000. And that same house would have, if we suddenly you were able to get that 22% back, the assessed value on the tax bill of a house valued at $100,000 is $406 of town tax. An additional 22% would bring the tax bill up to $495, or an increase of $41.29 per month over the year. Said differently, you would pay, less than $100 more a year in taxes, but you would lose $22,000 in value in your home, which means when you go to refinance, get a home equity loan, you're losing your financial leverage. So the town has to do something. The town has to do something to try to effectuate positive change in those assessed values. The other item that we had talked about many times during the budget process is that the town had not raised its taxes in over 20 years here. Something that Mr. Cather had alluded to, the town has been in a sewer and water moratorium since 2006. And there have been some that have said, well, that really has no impact on values in your property. By all means, it absolutely does, because no one is going to come into this community and invest money into businesses and improvements and expansions if there's no sewer and water. So that's why it has been imperative for the town to solve these sewer and water issues. Unfortunately, there are costs associated with that. And as Mr. Cather had talked about, maybe past generations of elected bodies didn't process that information right and didn't move quickly enough and get these things resolved in costs that could have been $2-3 million at the end of the 1990s. Didn't get resolved until the 2010, 2011, and $2 or $3 million went up to $13 million. So, there's negative impacts to the delay on that. But an interesting stat here is that with everything that the town of Rising Sun is doing right now, this chart here represents all of the communities of Cecil County. And there's the total population of those communities, what the assessed values of all their properties are, how much that assessed value translates into each person in the community, and then what their tax rate is, and then the amount of tax revenue that they generate. So the town's tax rate right now is 48 cents per every $100 of value, because we just raised the tax, so now we jumped up to $906,000. We're still not near what we were doing in 2010, but this is a step to get us in the right direction. But the interesting thing is, the town of Rising Sun provides a 24-hour police department and does its own building permit inspections, which generates revenue for the town of Rising Sun, which generates control. We always have people complaining about lack of code enforcement. Back in 2007, there were concerns about where the town was going in relation to code enforcement and building permit inspection. So only the town of Elkton and the town of Rising Sun have a 24-hour police department and a fully working building department. And despite that fact, the town of Rising Sun only spends $315.64 per each person who lives in the town of Rising Sun to provide the services that the town provides. And there are some services that we do above and beyond. We do trash and recycling collection on a weekly basis, and we do bulk pickup on a weekly basis. Unlike other communities where you have to wait maybe twice a year, 3 times a year to do the bulk pickup, we do that. And we also do yard waste collection. We go around once a week and pick up the yard waste that people generate in and around their home. My point is, when I said earlier about we got to manage our money, we are attempting to manage our money wisely, and it's showing in the fact that we were able to provide all these services for $315.64 per person, compared to some of these other communities that have a much higher cost per person. And in some cases, they're not even providing the same services that the town of Rising Sun does. Getting more specifically to the utility bill analysis, this is something that the elected body last year actually talked about doing. Some members on the board will remember this, that there's the idea that as has been raised, you cannot deduct your utility bill on your taxes. And there are charges that are listed on the utility bill that do not have to be on the utility bill. They can be covered in the real estate tax. A good example of that is the town of Perryville. Does not charge an additional cost for trash collection. It is picked up in the real estate tax. It is one of the services that is provided in the real estate tax. So when a person in Perryville, if they're able to itemize on their taxes, gets their county tax bill, they are able to take the total of the county tax bill and the Perryville tax and give that or declare that on their tax return for the IRS, because the real estate tax pays for multiple services. It's when you specifically itemize on a utility bill trash or sewer charges or water charges, that's what you're not able to do in accordance with the IRS. That's the tax advice that we got from people, is that, and I'm gonna show later on, that we are taking that money off the utility bill because it doesn't have to be there and moving it over to the real estate tax. And I can show you in the budget process where we're actually documenting where that money is going to. So there is no issue with IRS in terms of a tax deduction. If there is, there's an issue with a lot of municipalities, because again, many municipalities cover their trash collection in their real estate tax bill. So getting to the actual tax bill itself, what we wanted to do was give residents some type of relief. And the utility bill is something that the town gets criticized, and rightfully so. We do have a high cost for gallons per 1,000 gallons of water used. We're not the highest in the county, but we are up there at the top. The range of difference is roughly $4 to $5. The low end is in the $4 range. The high end, higher than us, is in the $9 range for water. But the thing that we do differently from those other communities is that we only bill on 1,000-gallon increments. And what that creates is that when we look at our utility billing, roughly 58% of our residents use 5,000 gallons or less in a month's time. And because of the way we do the utility billing for 1,000-gallon increments, they don't pay as much as if that same property was hypothetically in one of the other communities. Because some of the communities, Cecil County, for instance, charges you for 10,000 gallons of usage, whether you use that water or not. So Cecil County's water rate is in the $8 range. We're like $1 more, about $1.25 more than the county. But somebody who's using 5,000 gallons of water in the town of Rising Sun is paying less than somebody who is using water in Cecil County. And where that becomes a big benefit, when we're always thinking about creative ways to help our residents, and we always talk about people on a fixed income. Typically, people on a fixed income are retirees, the kids are out of the house, they're not using a lot of water. The way our rate structure is set up, we can, I don't want to call it reward them, but they can get benefit to the fact that they're not using as much water because we only bill in 1,000-gallon increment. And nobody else in the county does that. So that is a creative way that we're taking the costs that to some degree have to be and managing them in a way that has a better positive impact for people. So yes, our utility bill cost per 1,000 gallons is the second highest in the county, but the overall cost of getting sewer and water is not as high as other communities. But we always have a hard time with that argument because we always had $32.03 of other charges on that bill, with 21 of that being the trash collection there. So now when somebody opens up their bill, and let's take a senior, somebody on a fixed income, we have lots of seniors who open up their bill right now and they see a bill of $60.66. Under this new format, they're going to see a minimum bill of $28, not $66. So the senior right off the bat is going to see on a monthly basis that reduction here. So we shifted that money off the utility bill because it didn't need to be on the utility bill. And here is an analysis here of, and this is a comment that I made last month when I was saying May. What I thought I was very clear in is that this may work if you are in a position to itemize on your taxes. Not everybody itemizes their taxes. So however, if you are in the 15% tax bracket or the 25% tax bracket, your $384 utility bill in the 25% tax bracket can be $130.68 deduction. In the 15% tax bracket, it can be a $92.25 tax deduction. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that that benefits somebody who never had that bill before. That's not my point. My point is in trying to get something that fits better for everybody at large. There's a large percentage of our residents that are going to get a benefit of those charges on the utility bill being moved over to the real estate tax bill. So that's a walk through that. Let me show you something that we are making up to distribute, and I'm not, Commissioner Shepard made this for me today, and it's hard to read, so I will read it here for you, and it's basically a cheat sheet on what the utility bill means for people. So the first box up here says current monthly utility bill. The minimum monthly utility bill for a majority of our residents is $60.66 per month, regardless of how much water is consumed. That goes to the next box that says current monthly utility bill. Of that $60.66, there are $32.03 of charges that consist of $4.34 for water debt service, $6.34 for sewer debt service, and $21.35 for trash, yard waste, and recyclables. This monthly charge is equal to $384.36 per year. The next box says, is it tax deductible? In accordance to IRS standards, taxpayers cannot itemize or deduct their utility bill on their taxes. What the town is doing is the monthly charge of $32.03 or $384.36 per year annually will be removed from the utility bill, reducing the minimum monthly bill from $60.66 to $28.63. That goes over to what are we doing with the funds? And this is a misnomer of what we are doing with these funds. The monthly charge for trash is now being paid like other town services in the real estate tax. This is similar to other towns in Cecil County. The money that was previously used to pay for vehicle replacement, street repaving, building mortgages, etc., will now be used to pay for the trash collection. So this utility tax bill is not, and it's categorized in the budget, it's not being used to pay for trash. What the money that under the real estate tax which was previously used to pay all the debt service is now being paid for by this new debt service tax. That's why it is compliant with IRS standards, because it's not a new tax for trash collection or sewer and water debt service. It's being used to pay for debts that we have on the building. We owe $1 million on this building, $84,000 a year on the building. We have $1.5 million of paving that's been done over the last 3 or 4 years with annual payments on that. That $384 per month or per year, that money collected is now going to be used to pay for those debt services there. What is the debt service tax? I just explained that. The new debt service tax was created equal to $384 to offset the payments for vehicle replacements and street repaving, building mortgages, and old sewer and water debts. The benefits to the majority of the town residents. Basically the chart says is what I've been talking about. It's now tax deductible. We saw the previous slides that show what that can mean for each person. The last thing that I wanted to cover here is for the benefit of the elected body, because a question has been raised, and we talked about this during the 10 or so meetings. We kicked around a lot of things. It's conversation that carries over from.
Just not to interrupt, but just to comment on that, it was 10 public meetings we had on the budget, the debt service and everything, and I mean.
It wasn't that we didn't consider other options. We went through.
Well, not
As I said,
Yeah.
I'm not involved. My tax bill was my first.
right.
I'm not a resident of Rising Sun. I'm not allowed to vote in Rising Sun. So, just so I'm clear, it was the first indication that I saw it.
Right.
And I wasn't intending to
No, I don't think we took it that way. We
imply
just-
that you people didn't put any thought that you folks didn't put any thought into it. But what I saw in the video appeared to be an open slam dunk case that we're gonna do.
Well, that's because all before that.
Yeah,
We've
well,
done a lot of
I
pre-work up
understand.
to
I
that point,
understand. I had to make a point just as you had to make a point.
So the point of my last slide presentation here is that I guess what I'm trying to impart upon people, and I've said this almost from the day I walked in the door here, and I believed it throughout my municipal career, is that the old way of providing municipal government is becoming stale and stagnant. And people do it the same way all the time, and they run the ship into the ground all the time. And just like the IBMs of the world and the McDonald's of the world and businesses that rebrand themselves and recreate things, we need to continue to try to think outside the box. And we just showed some examples of where we're trying to think outside the box instead of running the same party line out there all the time. So for the purposes of this learning experience, and so that everybody has another chance to look at what this tax really means, specifically the point that Mr. Cather brings up and the other gentleman about the other properties, I want to take a snapshot of what this means for everybody. So you can basically take this debt service tax, and the people that it impacts can be divided basically into 4 categories. And we have the owner-occupied and paying a utility bill. We've received about 15 inquiries over the last week and a half regarding this. After explaining the relationship of the new 384 debt service tax that used to be on the utility bill and can now be deducted by some, the feedback has been positive. Of the 775 residential properties in town, this makes up roughly 550 of those properties, the owner-occupied. The bulk of our owner-occupied residents see the most direct benefit. Admittedly, they do. They own it, they live there, that's their only house, and they're paying their utility bill, so they are getting the most direct benefit out of this. As discussed before, this group of property owners is likely seeing a reduction in the total cost they are paying now versus last year's cost due to the ability to deduct on their taxes. You saw the previous slide that I showed where some people living in a home assessed at $209,000, which is the average assessed value of property in Rising Sun, and people living in a home assessed at $150,000, or in some instances, they had the potential to be paying less out of pocket this year than they were last year, despite the fact that the town raised the taxes to generate $138,000 of new money. So that was a way we tried to get creative in this to offset that burden on people. Landlord with tenants that are living in the property. In some cases, the landlord never paid the utility bill, so they never had the $384 charge. Now they are seeing it for the first time. Their concern is that they cannot raise the rent. Some have claimed that they can't pass this cost on to their tenant, and the sentence is incomplete because the tenant won't be able to pay for it. But in reality, the tenant has already been paying for that over the last couple of years in the utility bill. So if the landlord wanted to pass that along, it's no increase to the tenant. It's what they have been paying up to this point in the utility bill. In addition, the landlord now has another possible deduction as part of the business of having a rental property. So I'm not telling you this is as good as the owner occupied, but that's some of the details on that. The other thing we have with landlords is that in some cases the landlord actually pays the utility bill as part of the rent that is collected. They do this because ultimately the landlord property owner is responsible for the water bill. It is their property that goes to tax sale if the bill is not paid. So we do have instances where the tenant just packs up, doesn't pay the utility bill, skips town, and we work often with landlords who actually come in and say, will you do me a favor and shut the water off so I can evict them? They are such a bad tenant, I want them out of here. That's true. And they come to the town and ask us to help leverage those people that are destroying their property, not paying their bills or whatever. But ultimately, it is the property owner's responsibility for this bill. The landlord, as the property owner, is ultimately responsible for the bill. The town sends all utility bills to the owner. In some cases, tenants request a copy of this bill also, and we call that a courtesy bill. Ultimately, the responsibility is the property owner. The next one, and this is the one where it's painful, is this group, landowners with land only, no building. This group ranges from owners of small pieces of land that are adjacent to their house. Although the land in some cases may not support a standalone building in the future, they do afford the property owner with more land in which to expand their existing structures and use in the future. Preliminary review indicates that roughly 15 to 20 properties in the incorporated limits of the town of Rising Sun have those little small pieces of land that by themselves you probably can't build a building on that land. Now they are getting the debt service tax. These properties could be combined into the main parcel and the additional debt service charge would go away. So if someone has a small sliver of land, it could be merged into the overall property and the debt service charge goes away. Now, as I was saying to Mr. Cather this morning, in looking at this, I'm hearing one resident in particular was saying, yeah, but I went to an attorney a couple of years ago and he said he wanted $3,000 to do it. Me professionally, I can't figure out why it would be $3,000. So I am going to look into finding exactly what is involved in doing that and try to help people who, if there is a benefit to doing that, we can help them in trying to navigate that the best way possible to do that. The next group of owners of land that either have an adjacent lot with a structure or vacant lots are large enough to be built upon in the future. The range of what the taxes might be on these parcels varies. We have noticed some larger tracts of land being assessed with a tax bill less than other parcels half that size. I'm just throwing that out there for observation. I found it interesting. There isn't really a consistency around the size of land. Preliminary review indicates that roughly 10 to 15 properties in this category where they have another piece of land and it is buildable in the future. The final group on this category is land owned by developers that plan to develop in the near future as the town moves closer to resolution of water and sewer issues. And then we have commercial properties. These properties are typically located in town and receive a utility bill. The footnote that's important here is it's important to note that although the trash and sewer and water debt charge are moving to the real estate tax, that money being collected under the debt service tax is directed towards the town's overall debt service, such as town hall building, mortgages, etc. We talked about that earlier. I'm not going to go over it again. I mentioned again that Perryville collects their trash in the real estate tax. The other thing that, and Mr. Cather highlighted this, is an expectation that that never goes away. I'm not going to sit here and make promises on that, but there are some, because it's the elected body that makes that decision in the future, there is some debt service that has 5 years left, 3 years left. Hypothetically, dollars could be pulled off this debt service in the future because it's a flat rate. And remember what the dilemma we were going through in the budget process, that if we just raised the taxes to do things, you could have many more properties paying a much higher percentage for something that they're not getting the benefit of the service, sort of like what Mr. Cather is suggesting. He is one of some. Under the other scenario, we would have had a lot more getting hit with that. So one of the things we know that we don't have control over is the county has been raising the cost of recyclables. And if you look at the county's fee schedule, they don't even give you a cost of what the recyclables are. They have a note that says market value. And they leave open to notify us at any given time that, hey, the cost of recyclables went up. Although there are costs that the town simply cannot control, by moving costs to the real estate bill, the town can control the impact on many of our residents. And again, in bringing up Mr. Cather, he had talked about the fact, and I think the other gentleman too, nobody likes to pay more taxes. But on one hand, having the trash in the real estate tax, if the county hits us with another large increase like they did a couple months ago, remember our residents went nuts over that. At least when the cost goes up, if we have to pass it along, we're passing it along in the real estate tax, where again they can get at least some tax deduction benefit if they qualify for itemization. And then the last thing that I wanted to point out is from the perspective of the number of people or properties that have a utility bill in the town of Rising Sun. This sort of puts it in perspective. There are 901 taxable properties in the town of Rising Sun. The exempt ones that's mentioned in the fee schedule, Mr. Cather, is the churches and the fire companies and stuff like that that are tax exempt, the Boys and Girls Club, things like that. We have 942 service locations in our utility billing system. And the question gets asked, we only have 901 taxable properties. How is that? Because we have roughly 15 or so properties that are tax exempt. And they still get a utility bill from the town, so they don't show up. And then we also have some properties who get utilities from us, but they're not in the incorporated limits of the town of Rising Sun. And then you have another number which Mr. Cather represents of he's not in theory, his house is not in the town of Rising Sun, his piece of land is in the town of Rising Sun, and he's not reflected in the utility bill, but he's reflected in the taxable property. My point is we have 942 service locations that are hypothetically have the potential, if they itemize, if they can, to get a benefit of this charge coming from the utility bill over to the real estate. Is it a perfect solution? Probably not. I think it's something that we have to grow with, we have to continue to look at, because our goal at the end of the day has always been to do the best thing for our residents, so this is just part of the process.
I'm sorry, who was Mr. Cather? Okay, and I'm sorry, what was your name?
Mr. Jackson, Jeffrey Jackson.
Okay, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Jackson, are all the three additional unimproved parcels, are they immediately adjacent to your primary property?
No.
Okay, are they clustered together at least?
Yes, they
Okay.
are.
So the one that's like 56 square feet is associated with the other two, and they all together could make
Yeah,
one parcel?
They could, yes.
Would them, like, what are the sizes of the other two?
15.7 acres and 3.79 acres.
So a total of 18
It's
acres
18
plus?
Totally, it's almost 19 acres, 18.95 acres is what total is.
Okay, so if the three of those were combined together, that would at least, and they're all, if you don't mind me asking, which, is that,
It's behind Spicer Cycles and
Okay,
on
got it,
Main
understand.
runs over to Pearl Street.
so that would actually be one that would be sensible to be combined together, because eventually that's probably gonna be subdivided anyway. Is, I think your plan for that, correct?
Not my plan.
Not yours? Okay.
Not my plan.
Okay,
But
okay,
but
so,
someday,
yeah.
I mean,
So that one there would be a good example of one where we probably look into combining those together. That would at least knock it down to one parcel, so that we're dealing with one parcel. Because one of the things, we do have a lot of trying to deal with like these little bits of parcels. Like a 56 square foot parcel makes no sense. I mean, we really.
like I said, I have no
yeah.
problem with what you've come up with at my house. You know,
Right.
I live in town, I understand fully well, and I think it's,
Yeah.
but then I have these other three properties and,
Right.
it's substantial, it's a lot of money,
Understand, and yeah, so and I think we anticipated some issues to come out of this, and we figured we would handle. I mean, some of this was the only way to weed out a 56 square foot parcel. I think would have been. I don't even think you would see that on the map. It's probably so small. So probably about the only way to find it is to.
It's actually on the map.
If you go into the Cecil maps, you can see it.
If you go onto it, you can find it.
You have to,
But
like,
gotta
really
know-
zoom in.
You gotta know where to look.
Yeah, I'd imagine.
It's right over top of the sewage line, you'll get a bill.
So
Dr. Brandenburg property, right?
Now, the one thing I wanted to clarify with Mr. Kaiser, this morning when you asked me about sewer and water, I was answering in the context of whether the sewer and water runs down Stevens Road. I'm saying it's not there. We are on the verge of getting out of the sewer and water moratorium, so it could be available in the very near future. Not saying that changes
Well,
everything, but I wanted to answer the context of the question.
That's a nice thought, but you and I both know we're not on the verge of it. You still have a water problem to deal with, and it's gonna be a water problem. My concern was that I, either rescind the bill or provide me water and sewage. Now, I have to pay this, check will go out in the mail tomorrow. I pay my taxes. But, I've lived in Rising Sun my whole life. The piece of land I bought will not perk. That's why the developer held on to it for years. He also was forced to hold on to it because the town would not provide water or sewer. And if you know where the property is, you understand. You'll either have to purchase right away, you'll have to do eminent domain. It's very likely that it may not be even contiguous with property zoned in town.
So the reason that you
But
purchased it
zoned
was,
in town for a reason, and I'm not gonna get into that now. I didn't do it.
well, we
If
didn't
you
do it.
wanna- If you wanna on-annex it, that would suit me just fine. But the thing is, it's $400, versus what, I'm with Jeff, I own another property in town, and I know the dilemma you're in, and I don't have a problem with this.
Yeah.
Mr. Benneberger's presentation was very enlightening for some of the items. But my personal property at home, I have a problem with. I'm not getting in service. You don't come out and plow my street, you don't do anything. Matter of fact, about 7 years ago, I called here for police presence, and the officer told me, we don't patrol Stevens Road. It's the truth, Chip, I was forced to call 911. Okay, so I don't look at Rising Sun as a service provider for me. And for me to pay $384 this year, and probably several more years, that's unfair. That's taxation without representation, you know? I'll throw a Tea Party bill, you know? And I'm not being facetious, but I think you guys did the best with what you had. It was a good idea, but some things were not thought out. You said you realized there were gonna be issues. Oh, I'm an issue, evidently.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's one of those things that we need to, you know, take a look at it, this individual scenario and see what makes sense here.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would like to address the vacant property issue.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as when you talk about places that have rentals, that's a whole nother story. But like your issue, and I'm sure there's more just like it that, you know, we could look at it further.
I would appreciate it.
All right.
When can I expect to hear something? Check goes out tomorrow.
Calvin, I mean,
Well, we definitely won't, I don't think we'll be able to talk about it tonight.
Oh, I'm sure he won't, but
So.
I'm not pushing the envelope, but I don't want it to be
Yeah.
forgotten. I will be back.
No, I mean, we're gonna look into it, and I mean,
I think Mr. Jackson had
Expect
a
by-
question.
I just wanted to thank you guys for the discussion
Certainly.
and the availability to talk to you guys. I'm not the eloquent speaker that this guy is. I'm not as polished.
No, I mean, we
by
certainly
far.
appreciate-
It's not a age, it's experience, Jeff. I keep telling you.
no, I mean,
Anything that you guys can do, like I said, my personal residence, I don't have a problem. I understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, you know, but the other one, like I said, I just want to thank you guys for at least letting us speak, and you guys talking back to us also.
no, I mean, I think the biggest thing I would say, and this is just my personal thought, I'm not gonna ask for the board's support on this, but we have some individuals who will, you know, say things or mouth off online, but not show up at a town meeting, and it's refreshing to have people to actually speak to and have a dialogue with, instead of just hearing one side of the story and not wanting to come out. So it is refreshing to have that dialogue with you two gentlemen. So, Mr. Cather, I would say by the next town meeting,
I mean, I
let's say
think by the next town meeting, we could
um,
definitely have a serious.
we'll try to
discussion.
have some type of discussions in the intermediate time
Mm-hmm.
and try to get back to you either way. So expect an email before the next town meeting to let you know what's going on at least.
I appreciate it. Thank
Yep,
you all very
thank you.
much. Thank you.
Calvin, do you have his email address since?
Huh?
Do you have his email address since we just promised him an email?
We can get his email address
Yeah.
before the end of the town meeting. Next on the agenda is Resolution 2016-08, which is just a classification of overtime. Town Administrator, do you have that?
Yeah, if you give me a second to catch up.
52 square feet. Did you get your thing? Did you open it?
In your
I burned it,
packet,
that's what it
you
was.
should have Resolution 2016-08, and then the actual section from the personnel manual related to this. So I'm gonna jump back to Resolution 2016-08, a resolution titled Personnel Classification of Overtime. We're going to skip the boilerplate stuff at the beginning. Whereas Chapter 2 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Rising Sun, Article 3, Section 2-304, titled General Personnel Rules, authorizes the Board of Commissioners to adopt by resolution a code of personnel rules and regulations. Such code may contain a job description and classification system for town employees, basic annual rates of pay for each such classification, longevity pay rates, if any, hours of work, overtime compensation, designation of holidays, holiday pay, annual leave, and sick leave benefits, and a description of any additional fringe benefits for any such classification or classifications. The code may also prescribe rules concerning promotion, demotion, discharge, voluntary separation, and describing grievances and appeals procedures for such classified employees, and any other rules and regulations the Board of Commissioners from time to time may deem necessary. The Mayor and Commissioners of the Town of Rising Sun wish to amend this personnel manual, more specifically Chapter 5, titled Compensation, Section 5-6, titled Overtime Compensation, whereas the mayor and commissioners of the town of Rising Sun wish to more clearly define hours worked and to recognize procedures for calculating overtime that is consistent with the provisions of the Fair Labor Standards Act, and therefore be it enacted and resolved that the mayor and commissioners of the town of Rising Sun introduce the attached document titled Personnel Rules and Regulations Manual Revisions to Classification of Overtime 7-12-16 on this 12th day of July. And so the actual change itself is, in this section, is under the Fair Labor Standards Act, hours worked is actually hours that are worked. Hours that are worked when you, for the purposes of when an employee gets overtime, do not include vacation time, personal time, sick time, bereavement, for any reason that the employee is not at work. Those hours that they are not on work on approved leave do not get credited as actual hours worked. And we have, this is something that, you know, as we've been cleaning up our personnel manual over the years, this is something that we have talked about in the past, and the board had asked me to move forward on something like this because as we are trying to keep our costs down, we need to look at the way overtime is being used. And we have had an issue with specifically employees that have designated times for overtime, such as the public works employees having to come in on Saturday and Sundays to do patrols of the community. Under the Fair Labor Standards Act, if they take an 8-hour vacation day during the week and then come in Saturday and Sunday and work for 2 hours each one of those days for a total of 4, they get paid regular hours for those 4 hours, not time and a half for each of those 4 hours. The town, although it's never, actually, if you look in the black letters of what the personnel manual has always said is overtime is defined as hours required to be worked beyond 40 hours and a standard week. Then you jump down here and it says 40 hours is actual hours worked. It does not include vacation time, personal days, sick time, or any other time off. That's been in our personnel manual going back to when it was first adopted in 2003. But the town has not really enforced that. And lately, with our costs going up, we need to curtail that. But yet at the same time, we do not want to minimize the appreciation we have for employees being available and willing to come in and handle incidents. So my point is, if this ordinance basically, or this change in the document, item number 1 says, for the purposes of determining the application of overtime compensation, employees requested to stay longer than their normal workday, or employees called back into work before or after their normally scheduled workday shall be credited for hours worked to include those hours covered by approved leave time such as vacation time, personal days, sick time, jury duty, and bereavement. Where the second item says, for the purposes of determining the application of overtime compensation, employees previously scheduled to work before or after their normal workday, such as public works on Saturday, Sunday, and holiday coverage of the town, and police department special details for community events, shall be compensated for actual hours worked and does not include vacation time, personal days, sick time, or any other time off. So what this is saying is that we don't want to penalize our employees who legitimately ask for time off, and then a water main breaks down in Valley View and we ask them to come in and we're not willing to pay them for overtime. We don't expect them to manage their time off when they don't know what's going to happen. But we do want to expect our employees, when they know they are working a Saturday and Sunday in September, don't schedule 3 days of vacation leading up to it and then get paid overtime when you come in. So we're not, this is not, and I want to say this carefully because we're not violating the Fair Labor Standards Act. We're just not being as restrictive as the Fair Labor Standards Act. The Fair Labor Standards Act allows us to do less in terms of not penalizing the employee. We just can't do more and penalize the employee. So we're actually compromising here and saying that if you take time off and an event happens, or you were supposed to be off tomorrow and one of the guys says, hey, I need you to work a couple hours tonight, we're not going to penalize them because they were off during the week. It's, so that's what this personnel manual change is.
All right. Could I get a motion to approve the reclassification of overtime resolution 2016-08?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes. Thank you. Resolution 2016-09, which is holiday pay. Town Administrator, would you like me to read that since you've kind of...
Yes, if you have a guy.
Yes, sir. All right, I'm going to skip the boilerplates. It says, whereas Chapter 2 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Rising Sun, Article 3, Section 2-304, titled General Personnel, authorizes the Board of Commissioners to adopt a resolution, a Code of Personnel Rules and Regulations. Such code may contain a job description and classification system for town employees, basic annual rates of pay for each such classification, longevity pay rates, if any, hours of work, overtime compensation, designation of holidays, holiday pay, annual leave, and sick leave benefits, and a description of the additional fringe benefits for any such classification or classifications. The code may also prescribe rules concerning promotion, demotion, discharge, voluntary separation, and describing grievance and appeal procedures for such classified employees, and any other rules and regulations that the Board of Commissioners from time to time may deem necessary. And whereas the Mayor and Commissioners of the Town of Rising Sun wish to amend this personnel manual for more specifically Chapter 5, titled Compensation, Section 5-06, titled Overtime Compensation, and whereas the Mayor and Commissioners of the Town of Rising Sun wish to be more clearly defined hours worked during holidays that is consistent with the provisions of the Federal Fair Labor Standards Act, and therefore be it enacted and resolved that the Mayor and Commissioners of the Town of Rising Sun introduced the attached document titled Personnel Rules and Regulations, Manual Revisions to Holiday Pay, 7/12/2016 on this 12th day of July 2016. All right.
Mayor, the actual change is up on the screen. You have that. This is basically a new policy because our personnel manual is rather silent on holiday pay. And so basically what we are doing is we are making sure that we are paying our employees time and a half for holiday pay. But we also have, and this is an unwritten rule, I've never found any documentation of this, but there, to some degree, is an issue if a police officer is scheduled to work on a holiday, they are not getting paid time and a half because it's not above and beyond the minimum hours required for overtime. And because our police officers don't work 9 to 5, 5 days a week, some officers can be on 3 days, off 4 days, whatever, and a holiday could fall in there that they are not working, period, but yet we give them credit for that 12-hour day, and they use it as like vacation time. And this becomes a huge manpower scheduling issue because you have police officers that can get upwards of 5 weeks vacation and then 96 hours of holiday pay that's just floating out there. And every year we've got to chase our guys. And the chief was saying the other day, we have a couple guys that are not even using the holiday pay or the holiday time off. So the idea is to start paying the police officers time and a half for the holiday. That will pick up typically 2 police officers at a time, and that's why we wanted to clarify when a holiday is, because for the rest of us, the holiday is during the working hours. But we wanted to clarify in here that the holiday is 12:01 a.m. the day of the holiday till 12, midnight the next day. That's the entire holiday. So if there are officers coming in on a 24-hour shift rotating in, they're going to get paid time and a half during that time. And the chief is going to make sure that all the officers, scheduling-wise, get an opportunity to say, yes, I want to work that overtime on that holiday. So we're going to do away with this floating time that's becoming a scheduling issue for the town.
Thank you, Town Administrator. Could I get a motion to approve Resolution 2016-09, which is holiday pay?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Town Administrator, I do have a copy of Resolution 2016-010 titled Utility Bill Processing Shutoffs. Is it okay if I read that?
The one thing I was going to suggest, Mayor, is you guys can adopt this resolution tonight, because it is a resolution, or you could let it sit. Why don't you read it, because there's descriptions in there, and you can decide if you're comfortable with the language, because this is sort of a complicated brain twister of how to deal with shut off of services.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and skip the boilerplates again. Whereas Chapter 8 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Rising Sun, Article 3, Section 8302, titled Water and Sewer Charges, authorizes the Board of Commissioners to adopt by resolution a water compensation charge and a sewer charge, and impose such penalties for delinquent payments of charges as it is deemed proper. And whereas the Mayor and Board of Commissioners of the Town of Rising Sun previously adopted Resolution 2016-06, titled 2016 Town of Rising Sun Fee Schedule, Recommended Update 614-16, in which the following language regarding the late payment of municipal taxes, special assessments, and service charges, which stated in part, failure to make timely payments on any municipal taxes, personal property tax, special assessments, service charges, and application fees shall result in a 10% recurrence monthly penalty fee on any unpaid balance after 30 days after due date, and it shall occur monthly until paid in full. Whereas the town is currently issues charges for water and sewer services on a monthly basis, and as part of that process, sends out a mailing for delinquent accounts, followed by a hand-delivered notice of intent to shut off water to the property. And whereas the cost of processing and manpower needed to process these delinquent accounts in a fair and consistent manner is very time-consuming and a drain on town resources. And whereas the Mayor and Commissioners of the Town of Rising Sun recognize although shutting off service for non-payment is a necessary deterrent to delinquent accounts, the creation of the above-detailed late penalty fee lends itself to be a more cost-effective and less frequent occurrence of shutting off services. Therefore, be it enacted and resolved by the Mayor and Commissioners, hereby establishing a shut-off policy regarding town utility services for non-payment. Starting on or about the 20th of October 2016 and continuing on a quarterly basis for any account that arrears and not paid in full with a zero balance by the 20th of that month, or such accounts can be shut off at any time. If the account has a delinquent balance of $300 or more, unless a payment plan of no more than 6 months is approved and accepted by the town, and the delinquent balance at any time is less than $300. And be it further resolved that the Mayor and Board of Commissioners of the Town of Rising Sun passed, approved, and adopted this resolution on the 12th day of July 2016.
What I'd like to basically is summarize the issue. On a monthly basis, we go through the process of shutting off water. And in your packets, you will see I have a copy of the ordinance regarding if payment of water is not received by the 20th of the month, the water will be shut off. The Town of Rising Sun doesn't even do that aggressively. We don't, like, if you don't have your payment in on the 20th, we don't just go out and shut off water. We go through the process of going into the system and printing out a list of people that have not paid, and that list is not generated until typically the 10th or the 11th of the following month. So you have your bill due on the 20th, and on the 10th or the 11th, we produce a mailing and we mail that out to people. And there's sorting, there's cost associated with that, and there's time organizing that. And we give people a couple days to come in and pay their bill. If they don't come in and pay their bill, then we print out a new list of the people that are left over from that, and we go out and we deliver those door to door. And if the bill is not paid at that point, on that timeline, then we shut the water off. And I made a statement in here that we try to do it in a fair and consistent manner. We have gone out after hours and turned water back on for people that have an extenuating circumstance that they've never reached out to us. My point is, we're always willing to work with people that are willing to communicate with us and that are not truly not trying to take advantage of the system. And so we have sent people out there at an overtime rate, at a call-in rate, to go and turn that water back on for someone who got caught up in life, basically, on that one occasion. So we try to be fair and we try to be consistent. But that's really not a cost-effective way of doing this. So the idea is, since the board passed where you would incur a 10% penalty on that, the need to go out on a monthly basis and shut water off and spend all that time and all that angst is probably not necessary. So this resolution proposes to basically shut water off on a quarterly basis. So that's one thing to take out of this. The second thing to take out of it is that we don't want to have somebody on a quarterly basis just saying, hey, I'm not going to pay it, period, and the next thing you know, they've got a $500-600 bill. And then we all know that after the year, if the bill is outstanding, we send the property to tax sale. So we don't want to inadvertently be setting people up where they think, oh, I don't have to pay my water bill, and they get this large bill that they can't pay. So that's why we put the threshold in there that if your outstanding balance is $300 or more, we're going to go through the process of notifying you and saying, hey, you got to get this balance down. And then every quarter, if the balance is not paid with zero, not just the balance forward, that creates cash flow issues for us. We have people that have figured out how to play the system, quite frankly, because we've never charged a penalty fee on that. And so they will just pay the balance forward and leave that money hanging out there, and that's money that can hypothetically sit there for about 60 days. Under this new format, if somebody chooses to do that, there's going to be a 10% penalty on that, and then the water being shut off every quarter. So that, and we wanted to throw in there the recognition that we do accept payment plans for people.
I mean,
And-
town administrator, I hate to interrupt you, but I mean, I think the resolution itself is very self-explanatory. And
Yeah.
I mean, from the aspect, I think it's a good idea. I mean, I know how much time our crews spend on shutting people off that are delinquent payments. But I mean, I'm going to leave it up to the board whether or not they want this to sit to the next meeting or they want to vote on it tonight. It's up to the board. Does anyone have any issues with voting on it tonight?
I don't.
Can you hand it back to me so I can read
Yes.
it? Sorry. This is what we've previously, I think, discussed, you and I, right?
Yeah, just trying to figure it out, because there's a lot of moving parts on it.
Right.
We don't want to inadvertently create a monster.
Yeah, this last
Oh,
piece
what
was
is
the
it?
only piece that was
Right.
kind of new to me, so
Yeah. Just have Commissioner Shepard make the motion, he just walked in.
I'm going to let the record reflect that Commissioner Shepard has joined us. Commissioner Shepard, we're currently discussing Resolution 2016-010, which is an update to how our crews shut off water for delinquent bills.
Gotcha.
And we talked about moving it to a quarterly cycle instead of doing it in the cycles that we do right now.
Okay.
You can do a brief read through if you want, but the board is getting ready to do a vote on it.
I'm good if you got it. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is something we discussed previously. Could I get a motion to approve Resolution 2016-010, which is utility bill processing shutoffs?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion further? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I did want to ask the board, I do see on public presentations that we had just thought about discussing sidewalks and responsibility for repair. As the board is aware, I'm sure the public may not be aware right now, I'm going to call for an executive session to follow this meeting. If we could potentially sideline this to the next meeting, if that would be an issue. Is that an issue with anyone, that we have a further discussion? Maybe we can even have a discussion prior to the next meeting, back and forth through emails maybe, regarding this, if that would be okay with you guys. Okay? All right, we're going to move forward into citizens' input. Thank you. Ms. Maynard, go ahead.
Oh, Mayor, we're on a first-name basis.
Okay, my name's Brenda Maynard. I live at 33 Louise Court in good old Valley View. It's concerning the water break. I knew it happened and all like that, but have you guys been down there lately?
I was out of town for the last 5 or 6 days.
Yeah,
so
no, you've been in Maine or Massachusetts. The
Both.
road is like this. It's when
Wavy?
you park, yes.
Is
and
it the
then
asphalt or
The
where?
asphalt.
Okay.
And the big drain next to where I park, remember when you were down there, there was a little bit of a dip? When I pull in now, my tire goes whoop.
Sinking more.
Yes, it's sinking more. So I don't know what's going on, and I understand it might be with the
Where-
water issue, but it's getting.
Where's the wavy part, Brenda?
It
Is it
starts-
above the
Nope,
or
it starts
below?
right where the break was, there at 40, what is that, 44, I think, and it goes all the way down to 51. It goes the whole section.
That whole previous repaired section.
Yep,
Okay. That makes
plus
sense.
more.
Yeah.
But it's even going further down, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know what's
That
going
Which is-
on.
That's the $50,000 repair section.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
just got destroyed.
Yeah.
And when that break happened, I told you guys Monday. I told you Monday there was a leak, because I could tell.
Yeah.
But,
we-
and the water pressure's even, I will say the water pressure is a lot better than what it's been now going on 4 or 5 months.
Right.
So the water pressure, it's been leaking, it was leaking for a little bit. So, other
Well,
than
thank you
that-
for the update. I think Calvin and our crews will get down there as soon as possible to
Okay.
get it checked out. I'm sure it wouldn't surprise me if you see Commissioner Hawthorne right down there. You know how he is. He's very hands-on with sidewalks and streets, so he'll
Brought
probably
another
be down there as
shovel,
well.
fixing it himself.
Yeah, no, that'll probably be you, Commissioner Warnick. All right, Mr. Fisher, you can go ahead.
I gave you all a handout. The handout includes the proposal which would have saved the town of Rising Sun $5 or $6 million in capital cost and $385,000 a year in water costs per year to provide up to 5,000 gallons of water per day capacity. There shouldn't be a great urgency at the moment, as the town can permit more than 400 Morehouse building permits or their equivalent, and 38 more if the Lejeune property is used. If the Legion property, I'm sorry. I will be happy to discuss this with you after you have had a chance to review what's in those handouts. The first is a paper, and I'll briefly describe the deviations that are necessary. The first paper is a proposal by Earth Data Corporation to develop 4 wells on 484 acres of the McCoy family properties. And of one of the Legion wells, which is approved in the next handout. The McCoy family object to drilling the wells on their property north of Route 1, but will allow wells to be drilled as well as grant the recharge rights for the wells on the south side, or actually the recharge area for the whole thing. Okay. There are possibly two drills can be built on the south side. There are two wells already drilled on the Wellington Manor property. One of which is the most productive well that I've ever heard of in this area. I've also talked with Mr. Mackey, who owns 200 acres, which adjoins the northern boundary of the lagoon, who indicated that he is willing to discuss using selected locations in his property for wells. Earth Data has not evaluated either or of these alternatives, but the cost should be less, as all the wells in the locations that I've just talked about are less distant from the entry point into the existing town lines. The second paper is a paper from the Director of Water Permits of MDE. Note the underlined statements on this paper, the third single sheet is an extract of a 2010 study on the appropriate user rates to fund $220 million of projected cost of the improvements to the water and sewer system. Thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to discussing your comments at a later time. Thank you.
Before I have the chief come up, Mr. Fisher, the only thing that I will say is I remember this presentation by Mr. Moorhead. I was commissioner at the time, and he came. I understand your passion regarding wells in our community. It shows in the aspect of having these packets prepared to our council. I did want to let you know that we are moving forward with Chester Water Authority. We are in contracts with them. This board is moving forward with a pipeline, and we will be hopeful in the next year to have water courtesy of Chester Water Authority. So that is where we are. That is where we decided to go. And I don't think that you will see any deviation from this board. So moving forward, Chief, do you have your report?
Yes, sir.
Do you have your clicker, Chief?
I have my clicker. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. From the period of June 16th to July 12th, the Police Department has responded to and handled 457 incidents. Most notable of those incidents, and it's a running joke and social media in the Police Department and amongst the board members, it's Pokemon Go. We have encountered some serious problems, unfortunately, Mr. Lashir.
Not to interrupt you, Chip, but Commissioner Shepard was able to meet his Pokemon quota this evening before he arrived, so I don't play that.
That's why he was late.
The issue we're having with Pokemon Go participants are twofold. Trespassing at night. Our parks are closed at dusk. We're finding people wandering around aimlessly with cell phones held high, looking for imaginary creatures. This presents a problem. During the daytime, these same people are wandering around aimlessly into traffic. I personally nearly struck 2 individuals who were oblivious to life. They were looking at their cell phones for Pokemon. So please take heed. Pay attention to what you're doing. You're going to wander into traffic, get yourself hurt, or get someone else hurt trying to avoid, striking you.
I did also want to add that you can also cause personal injury. I saw a gentleman earlier this morning who was walking down the Main Street area and almost walked into a lamppost because he was...
It's amazing the number of people that are floating around the streets of Rising Sun with cell phones or any other device that can get to that app looking for Pokemon. So please be careful. We don't want to have to come out and deal with you because of a phone app.
It won't be an imaginary arrest, will it?
I don't think you're going to get any points for this one. For the Valley View, we spent 12.5 hours in Valley View this past period. Wrote 1 citation and not even keeping up with myself. We wrote 1 citation as a result of a traffic stop. In Bryan's Grace, we spent 18 hours there looking for the excessive speed, parking violations, and drugs. And as a result, we made no arrest and had no traffic stops. That indicates to me that things over there are starting to settle down. Along West Main Street, we have the complaint of speeding. We monitored traffic 1 hour with no citations. On Queen Street, we spent 10.5 hours with 17 citations and 1 criminal arrest. The number of arrests in the town are up for the last period. We had 6 arrests for controlled dangerous substances. I'll try this one more time. 6 arrests for controlled dangerous substance, 8 fugitives from other areas. That continues to be an issue, that people that are involved in criminal activity tend to come to Rising Sun for some reason. We seek them out and take them to justice. We had 2 arrests for trespassing, 1 for burglary, 1 for disturbing the peace, 2 for harassment, and 2 assaults. We also issued 1 criminal citation and 2 civil citations. The difference between a criminal citation is that there is jail time associated with it, and the civil citations, they are fines. There is no jail time associated with them. Lastly, there were 12 moving citations written during that period, 58 warnings, and 2 parking citations. Heroin continues to be a issue in the town. The guys are working very diligently to remove that from our town. But as you all know, it's something that's prevalent throughout this country now. And it's still, the main focus of law enforcement and should be the main focus of health and government to help deal with it. With that being said, that is my report.
Chief, I did want to give you a heads up. I forgot to get a hold of you today. Just to keep in mind, I'm not sure, you're probably already aware of this. I've noticed a few vehicles that are not pet owners that are meeting down at Triangle Dog Park. I was there a couple of times and their vehicles meeting there. I'm not sure what they're doing, but they don't have animals. So certainly if they don't have animals, they shouldn't be at the dog park. If they're coming to visit, or they would be out of their vehicle, but they're just hanging out in their vehicles and then driving off. So it's something to look into.
Has it been the last couple of days?
It was last week.
Okay, because there's been a lot of people just sitting across the driveway at the park on Diddy Richardson Park.
Yeah,
They're
for
playing
searching
Pokemon.
for Pokemon.
Yeah, there's
I
apparently
understand that.
That could be part of it.
A lot down by the laundromat,
Yeah, there's apparently one of them in that area or something. You go to that area, you'll.
It's right along the driveway to the pumping station lane.
Yeah, they just parked just right across the driveway. Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
So, thank you,
Again,
Chief.
that is.
On the bright side, they're not vandalizing anything.
That was last night walking through town after 5 o'clock. Shelley and I were just driving through the neighborhood because we were just in awe of how many people were walking around. Some had at least one person had their phone out and they were like just moving around.
I think it's great that, it increases tourism, maybe shopping in our businesses. But
We
pay
got the
attention
best
to why you're
Pokemon
doing it.
around.
Yeah. Marion may be a Pokemon character. Thank you.
The van's wearing Pokemon character.
Thank you. Town Administrator, do you have a report this evening? All right. Moving forward, I don't think we have any reports from the Historical Commission or the Arts Alliance. Any old business? Any new business? My report is pretty brief. I just wanted to give you a brief update. One thing I did want to do, a big shout out to, is the 13 to 15-year-old girls junior softball team. They played tonight for the state championship, so I thought that was pretty cool. I know we're all rooting for them. Hopefully they do a great job tonight. I think they're playing in Eden. I'm not sure where that is, but that's Eder Park. That's where the park, Eder Park. Yep. And I also wanted to say a big shout out to my cousin Jonathan. He thinks he's a celebrity because he ended up on the sports section of the Herald. A big photo of him. The 10 to 11-year-old All-Stars team are on their way to states. So big congratulations to him and his team. I also wanted to say a big thank you to the Rising Sun Arts Alliance for the great concert that they did. I know Commissioner Lashir was here as well. They just did a fantastic job with that, and we were a little worried with the rain how attendance would be, and I ended up texting Commissioner Lashir, and they had close to 70 people, I believe he said, come out to that in the evening, so that's great that all those people came out. Big shout out to Will Davis, who is getting ready to be Judge Davis. He came out, as well as Jackie Gregory, one of our new county council members. They also came out. So big thank you for visiting events in Rising Sun. Myself and the elected body, Commissioner Lashir, and Commissioner Shepard attended, along with the town administrator and the chief, attended the MML summer conference. I thought it was a great event. Not only did we have time to network with officials from other communities, take some great classes, but I also think we spent some time bonding together, which was great. We had a really nice dinner together, and it was just a great event to spend with not only us, but also our family members that came. I did want to thank the Board of Commissioners. We all worked very hard to get Governor Larry Hogan to make a stop here in Rising Sun. He made a stop on this past Thursday at Kilby Cream. It was a unscheduled stop to begin with. It was about a 2-week planning process and a lot of nagging, but we were able to get him here. And he spoke very highly of our community. His staff sent me a text message after seeing him not only at Kilby Cream but also at the Wellwood in the evening, and spoke very highly of our Board of Commissioners and our Chief of Police and how well put together the town of Rising Sun is, and look forward to him coming back in September. We're planning a visit for him in September to possibly do a walkthrough of our wastewater treatment plant. So I'm excited to look forward to that. Also, I did want to remind you that our school drive is still going on. You can drop school supplies off at the Herald at any time. They are any type of school supplies, from book bags to pencils. I've heard they need pencils and pens and glue sticks. So anything like that, drop that off at the Herald. A big thank you to them and their staff for all that they do to do that school drive. Moving forward into Commissioner's comments. Commissioner Auchenreith.
Thank you, sir. Again, as Mayor Marion spoke, we did have an excellent visit with Governor Hogan. We got to talk to him at the Wellwood that night, and we've got a good governor in place right now. A lot of people criticized us for being out spending some time. I think we were partying or something, but it was a great event. The District 35 team hosted that, and we all attended, and we did get some time to talk with him about the concerns we have and the need we need for help in this area. And in all the years I've been here, it's the first time I've seen a governor come to Rising Sun and listen to our concerns. So we want to thank him for that. Our public works guys are out doing some sidewalk work on Cooper But unfortunately, Calvin told me the backhoe broke down today. So everything we've tried to do over there, it just keeps, for some reason, it don't want to. It hasn't moved as fast as we'd like for it to, but we're getting some work done out there on top of everything else that our public works guys do in the prime of vacation, summer season, and the heat. So thank you to Ron and Calvin for getting that started. And the Planning Commission meeting, we're scheduled for our next meeting Monday, July 18th at 6:30 p.m. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Authrenreith. Commissioner LaShire.
Thank you, Mayor Marion. Mayor Marion and Commissioner Authrenreith pretty much covered everything I wanted to. The only thing I'll say is make sure you come out to our parks. There's plenty of geocaching going on, Pokemon doing it during the daytime. We actually just recently had 2 people, as I understand it, get married at the dog park, whether everybody knows. Excuse me?
I can't hear a word you say.
I can't hear you. Can you say?
You can't hear me.
Oh, okay. Is this better, Mr. Fisher? No? How about this? Is this better?
That's much better.
Thank you. Unless everybody knows that we just recently had 2 people get married at the dog park, as I understand it. I don't know if you guys might want to talk to Dallas. I think he did the ceremony, possibly, if you want to interview somebody. But other than that, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner LaShire. Commissioner Shepard.
I don't have anything prepared for tonight.
All right. Commissioner Warnick.
The only thing I want to mention is that we have Movies in the Park July 22nd. It's Norm of the North. And thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioner LaShire, for helping me get some of the publicity out, especially given I was out of town for about 5 days. So I came back to have to deal with that. And I appreciate, and a broken hot water heater. So I appreciate the help that was quickly assisted.
Absolutely.
It's funny, I can hear every word you said, but I hadn't heard anything the rest of them said.
So that's my report. Thank you.
Including you.
Thank you, Commissioner Warnick. Does anyone have anything?
Your hearing aid might not be working because
It is working, right?
if there's the
It's turned up.
Does anyone have anything else to come before the board this evening? I'm going to adjourn, and I'm requesting an executive session to occur within the next 10 minutes downstairs in the second floor conference room, and that's to discuss personnel. So could I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.